Hi, I'm Dan. Welcome to Airbrush Garage. If you're new here, welcome. If returning, thanks for coming back. Today, I'm going to be tackling a question that I get a lot from the viewers. I get a lot of troubleshooting questions, but one of the number one questions I get is, well, Dan, how do you clean your airbrush? Do I clean my airbrush? How often do I clean my airbrush? I'm going to be tackling those questions today. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around, consider subscribing, hit that bell so you get future notifications. A couple of comments, good or bad, really helps out with the YouTube algorithm and helps this channel grow. Don't forget to check out all my Amazon affiliate links down below for the products I use in this video and all my other videos. And with that, let's get started. All right, so let's start off with the first question. Dan, do you clean your airbrush? The answer is yes. But I will say it really depends on the situation, how often I clean my airbrush. What I mean by that is if you're going to be spraying with something like illustration colors by Createx, I can keep the paint in my airbrush overnight, come back the next day and start spraying again with usually no trouble at all. It doesn't dry hard. It's not a paint that has like a hardener in it. It's not a urethane. It is truly a water-based paint, and it dries what I like to call soft, but I know that's not the right term. But what I mean by that is, again, as long as I keep the brush wet, meaning the paint in there doesn't dry out, I can come back the next day with no problem, and I can clean out the brush and the cup with relative ease, when I'm done my project. Now, if I'm spraying with something like Wicked Colors, which I'm going to demonstrate here in a minute, if I left Wicked Colors in my brush overnight, can I come back and spray the next day? Yeah, I can, as long as it doesn't dry out. But what happens is it gets up on the cup and inside the cup, and I can't get it out. I can get it out, but with a lot of, muscle, I got to use my reducer, which, by the way, as far as a cleaner goes, reducer to me is the best cleaner. Doesn't matter what paint you have. The reducer for your paint is your cleaner. That's what I like to use. You can come up with all kinds of concoctions, knock yourself out. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use the reducer. It just cleans the best. So when it comes to the Wicked, and I try to clean this out the next day even, around or inside the cup, I got to take a brush. I got to take a paper towel. I have to load it up with a reducer quite a few times, really work it until I can get it off the cup. It dries hard. Now, the other thing I'm getting to with that is if you're going to be using something like an automotive paint that has a hardener in it. With something like that, I'm going to clean out my brush when I'm done spraying. And I'm just used to that because I didn't start with airbrushes. I started with, bigger spray guns like auto body guns. And when I was done spraying, I cleaned out my gun. I broke it down and I made sure all the components were clean. And that's what I like to do with my airbrushes. I don't spray a lot of automotive paints. With the Wicked, I'm going to show you that routine now, what I like to do with it. So before I get to that, there's a couple things you're going to need to clean your airbrush. And one is I always have my garbage can right down to the side of me where I'm spraying, and bring it up here so you guys can see it. But I put paper towels in there. As you're spraying and work and stuff, they accumulate paper towels. So I use this as my spray out. The other thing you're going to need is a small paintbrush, a set of brushes. Don't freak out yet. I'll explain how I use them in a minute. A needle reamer. And if you don't have one of those, I'm going to show you a paper towel trick. And reducer. This is not window cleaner. That is 4012 in there. As long as they have 4012 on the shelf, at some point they won't, but I'm going to keep buying it to use it as a cleaner. I think it's a great cleaner. It just saves me from using my 4011. When the 4012 is off the shelves, I'll use my 4011. All right, so if I'm using my Wicked Colors, when I'm done spraying at the end of the night and I know I'm going to come back the next day and spray, what I like to do is I like to grab my cleaner, dump my cup, give it a spray out, get my paper towel. You're going to need some paper towels. Clean up my cup, a couple sprays, take some reducer, put about a half a cup in there, a little spray out, a little backwash, make sure I'm clear. If I'm clear, I put my cap on, stick it back in my holder, I'm good to go. Come back the next day, add my paint, take out some of my reducer a little bit, of course, but add my paint, my reducer, and I'm pretty much good to go. Now, at the end, when I'm done my project, I am going to break the brush down. Again, if you're using automotive paint, I'd break it down when I'm done spraying. All right, so let's make sure all the reducer's out. So basically, first thing I do is when I'm going to be cleaning my airbrush, again, I'm going to give it a spray out. I'm going to dump my paint, give it my spray out, get as much out of the cup as I can. I'm going to get my paper towel, clean out my cup. This is my Eclipse. It does not have a detachable cup. I have some brushes over there now. They're starting to come with detachable cups. I really like that feature. This one don't, and I'm using it because it doesn't, because I think it's easier with the detachable cups, but this one doesn't, so I'm going to show you how I do it. All right, so I take the back off. Now I'm going to loosen up the needle, but there's something important here. I take my spanner wrench here and take off my nozzle. Now this is a little something different that I think I do than a lot of other people do. Some of you have ever seen some of my videos before on cleaning an airbrush. The reason why I do this is because I see people do it all the time and maybe they don't care. But they take the needle and they pull it out this way. Well, any paint that's on that needle is going to come out on your needle, and to me, you're dragging it through the brush itself. This needle is going through this trigger and through this housing here. And when I pull that needle out, there's still paint on it. So I drug that paint through that brush. I don't like to do that. I know people do it all the time and they probably have no problems. I'm just saying I'm a little OCD. I don't like to do that. So I push the needle forward and I bring it out the front of the brush. As you can see, and I don't know if you can, if the camera will pick that up, but there is red paint on that needle. I'll show you that here in a second. You see the paint that was on that needle? So I clean my needles. So the first thing I like to do is pull the needle through the front of the brush. Then I'm going to inspect the brush and see if I see any paint anywhere. If I see any paint up here in the housing, I can put a little reducer in there or cleaner, get my paintbrush, swirl it around a little bit. You take it to the front of the brush as well, because the brush gets up into that hole, and that prevents you to having to use the harsher method of the brushes. Now, the brushes to me still have a use. The reason why I would use a brush is because you let something really hard dry in your airbrush. And the paper towel method that I'm going to be showing you here in a minute just isn't going to do the trick, let's say. If that's not doing the trick, then you may have to resort to the brush. So these brushes have a use. They're not for every time use of cleaning your brush. But if you have some stubborn paint in there, some automotive paint, something that had a hardener, you may have to take a brush to it. It's not going to kill your airbrush to use that brush every now and then. But what I like to do is I like to take a paper towel. I like to take a corner of the paper towel and I like to twist it. I take it, I shove it. Now this one's easy because it's an Eclipse, so I have a lot of room to shove a paper towel up in there. But I even do it on my other brushes that aren't an Eclipse. I still roll that up really tight, stick it up there as far as I can, take a little bit of cleaner, take that paper towel and twist it while it's in there. Roll it around in there. As you can see, it came out pink. Okay, so even after flushing it out, there's still some stuff in there. Now that looks clean. So once the brush is clean, then you're going to turn toward the nozzle. Now, I know you guys out there, most of them have the really tiny, small nozzles, and this needle reamer works for that as well. Basically, the Eclipse has that same small nozzle right here at the tip of this brass compression fitting, but it works the same way. So what I like to do, again, is whether it's the small nozzle or this one, is run a little cleaner in there because you think it's clean. Okay, and you can take a paper towel on something like this particular nozzle, okay, to clean out the body of this nozzle. You stick your paper towel in there, give it a couple twists, and making sure it's clean, a little bit of red. The other thing you can, now this is going to be a lot dirtier too if I was spraying with it all day. I just loaded a little bit of fresh paint up in here. So you want to take this reamer. Now when you take this reamer and you're using it on your nozzle, you want to just push it up there. You don't even want to put no pressure on it. You just want the needle to slide in to your nozzle and then just gently rotate it. Again, you're not pushing it, putting any pressure on it. You don't want to, crack your nozzle. Just nice and easy. Okay. And again, do I need to do this every time? No. But if you're starting to have clogs and the brush is giving you a lot of trouble, it could be the slightest bit of dry paint up there in that little tiny nozzle, and that reamer just really does the trick. So that is a big, huge help when you are having problems and trying to troubleshoot your brush and clean your brush. All right, so now once you think it's all clean, there's another little routine that I do is I take my needle and I don't put the point in first, I put in the flat end. And the reason why I do that, now there is one brush that I can't do this with. I can't do this with my Talon because the needle has some grooves at the end of it and it won't slide out and I don't want to push it. So if your needle has little grooves at the end and you're trying to push it through that O-ring, you don't want to do it. You might not have, that's the only brush I have that I have no choice but to take the needle out the back. But if I don't have to, I don't like to. So what you see me doing here is any little bit of remnants of paint, and I'll get a lot of times, and you're not going to be able to see it, it'll push some paint, and even dry paint, that's what you get most of the time, right here where that needle's nice and flat on that end. And you'd be surprised at the paint sometimes that comes out when you do that. Now, I'll push it through 1, 2 times, probably no more than that, maybe 3, but usually the second time through, you wipe your needle, it comes out clean, you're good to go. So all that's left is to put this thing back together. Well, all right, there you have it. The answer to the question is, Dan, do you clean your airbrush? The answer is yes, I clean my airbrush. Now, I get away with a few days or maybe a week, depending on the project and what paint I'm spraying. I can get away a little bit longer than I used to, but I clean my airbrushes. A clean airbrush is a properly working airbrush, especially for you new guys and girls out there. You're just getting started. It's hard enough learning how to airbrush and the struggles you're going to be going through, let alone trying to deal with a dirty airbrush. So when I first got started, I cleaned my airbrush every night. I know people say that's excessive, but you know what? It worked for me. This brush is over 20 years old and it's still going strong and it's been cleaned a lot. So I hope you got something from this video. If you did, you guys know the drill. Consider subscribing. We're growing. It's all because of you guys. Another shout out to Fingsy for my great parts mat right here. Thanks a lot, Fingsy. Hope you're doing good. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.